Okay, this is the first book of this author that I read. There's another recommendation from that lovely book talker. And I'm just gonna say this is my least favorite book of the books she's written, and I will have so many more videos about her in the future because I've read like 15 of her books now, which is kind of crazy. I've literally listened to all of the audiobooks that she has on Audible. But whatever. The Bird Eater has another like kind of haunted house feel, return to a small town, a lot of depictions of grief and also addiction. Also, the descriptions of tattoos in this book are amazing. I've noticed that the author, Ania Ahlborn, kind of likes tattoos and likes to incorporate them into the plots. But this one has some of my favorite depictions of tattoos. To me, it's a mixture of like it and the birds. I don't know, it has like that kind of, we don't really know what's going on. Is he losing his mind? Is there a magical creature? There's definitely a lot of like legend. One thing that I will say about the author before, I'm gonna probably have to repeat this, but she kind of tells like modern fairy tales. Like she brings the idea of a fairy tale and puts it in a very modern context with completely new like mystical creatures. It also reminded me of like Haunting of Hill House because there's a lot of like time skips, which she also loves to employ. And also the idea that centers around a house that kind of has like strange goings on. I will say I didn't really like it. Like it was a good book and I loved the author, but this was just kind of, it was a letdown. It like kind of felt boring to me. It kind of dragged on. The ending is very unexplained and just kind of ordinary. I don't know. I definitely feel like this book could have been written better, and given that I have read a lot of better books by her, I know that she is capable of more. So in that way, I think this book let me down. But it is worth a read. I think also it was a good book to start with for her because while I wasn't sure if I wanted to read her other books after reading this book, it definitely gave me a foundation into like, what's her baseline? Because it only goes up from there, I swear. Like, if you start with this book, and you continue reading her books, you can only be amazed by what a good author she is. Another Ania Ahlborn book, The Devil Crept In. It's a children's view of the world. It follows a main character with speaking issues, which of course translates into bullying, it translates into him feeling very insecure. It often brings up in his like mental focus, like he slows himself down to try to like get his words out. When he gets stressed, when he gets upset, it comes out. It's oftentimes you feel like his discomfort in speaking and expressing himself, which is it's a very like sensitive way of discussing speaking issues. And I just realized I haven't read a lot of that. Usually when I hear someone writing in like kind of a dialect or like with the speaking affect, I often feel like it's very badly done and it's kind of almost mocking a character. But at least in the audiobook, it was very well treated. It started off very boring, like the first quarter. And then there's a terrifying home birth, and you're like, what is happening? And then you just find more and more. It's magical realism, it's very Rumpelstiltskin-esque. It's kind of similar to Just Like Home, the earlier book I talked about, in a weird, unexpected way. It's satisfying, it has a good ending, but it is creepy. This is another horror book, just to clarify, but it just gets really, like, unsettling and weird. This is not top on my list for her books, like it's pretty far down because it was like kind of boring, but another book that kept me going, that kept me reading her books. I'm not going to spoil it because you don't know what's happening in the beginning and I don't want to ruin that for you. Within These Walls is another Ania Ahlborn book. Now you can see how many I've been reading, but it was written very much kind of like an American Horror Story season. I put that it was like the first season of American Horror Story, but really it feels like its own season, like it could just be inserted and probably no one would notice. It's kind of like Cult, it's kind of like the first season, it's kind of like Hotel in some ways. It just feels like that. it's about a cult with an incredibly charismatic leader. Not like Children of Red Peak. I feel like this is definitely more cult of personality as opposed to like a god cult, because they don't really believe in God. I think it's more like Heaven's Gate, if you know about that, because they believe something about like the sky and going to the sky. It's very hippie, it's kind of set in that vibe. It's kind of like Hill House in the fact that there's like time skips between the past and the present, and sometimes the timelines cross in interesting ways. It focuses around a writer who is trying to get inspiration for his next book. It's really wild, some mental illness, some supernatural. My last line of my notes just says, "I can't even process this properly. I'll be thinking about this for a while." And that's definitely kind of what it left me with. It left me with a very uncomfortable feeling about humans and human nature and the way people are easily manipulated and also convinced of things that don't exist. I don't know. It was, again, like all of her books, very disturbing. This is also not the top of my list for her, but it was really good. And this is the kind of book that I might read again just to see if I missed anything, because I do feel like it was a lot to kind of digest in one sitting. And I do just listen to these all the way through in one sitting, or maybe two, but I don't take a lot of breaks, so it's a whole lot all at once. I'm gonna say that Brother was arguably one of the creepiest Ania Ahlborn books. It's also not the top of my list, but it kind of in the middle, I'd say. A murdering family in Appalachia. It's very deeply unsettling, and there's layers that you don't want, but they keep being unpacked. It reminds me of Macbeth or Hamlet or Get Out. I know it's kind of strange to put those three, but there's a lot of through lines between them if you think about it a lot. The last line of this just says, "I hate this author so much, time to listen to the next book by her." Because her books are like really addictive. Like you get really into the characters and you really start empathizing with them in very strange ways, while also being torn apart and being confused and not sure how to feel, because you don't like what the character is doing, and yet you understand how much wrong has been done to this character, and so you want him to be happy, but you also hate it. Like, there's a lot of weird, disgusting parts with all of her books. Please look at the trigger warnings, because I don't want to be responsible for you going into something that will like mess you up. This one didn't mess me up, but it definitely made me question, you know, what writing is, what should be written, what should be read. I think everyone should be allowed to write and should be allowed to read what they want, but this is like, it's getting there. It's getting into that territory of like, this makes me uncomfortable. And I think, you know, it's writing. Writing is an art form. Art often makes you uncomfortable. And this definitely did. Seed was apparently one of Ania Ahlborn's either first successes or her major success. Like, it's the one that people often know by her. And this is kind of the one that led me to realize how much her books kind of create their new folklore, because this is very, very mythological. It's very much about mental health. It also has focus on religion, and it centers around creepy kids and also creepy situations and mental health that's experienced by children and adults. And it kind of leaves you with that feeling of, is it magic or is it mental illness? I think she's very effective at it, and there's no way that I can tell you about this book without really spoiling it. This is another book where she moves tattoos into a magical, mystical way. I would connect this book most closely to Bird Eater, her other book, because a lot of the times it's the same feeling that you get through both of them. A child, now an adult, being haunted by the past and haunted by a mystical figure that you're not really sure if it's real or not, and tragedy strikes constantly. And also now his kid is feeling similarly. And so is it a generational curse, or is it mental health that's the generational curse? That's kind of this book. I don't read a lot of monster horror because I find it really boring, but The Shuddering by Ania Ahlborn was actually pretty good. It centers a lot around class difference. A whole group of people go to a remote cabin in the snow. I'm going to be honest, the cabin's not a cabin, it's more of a mansion on a hill. The descriptions of the building are like really incredible. I'm very into like writing about architecture, and so I very much appreciated the sumptuous descriptions. They are being stalked by monsters. I don't think that's a spoiler. It's pretty explained through all of the descriptions of the book. The cringy dialogue at this book almost made me shut it off. The dialogue between this group is so bad. I don't even care. Maybe that was the point. Maybe it kind of reads as like a like It or The Thing or The Monster from the Black Lagoon. It feels very campy and like old movie-esque. Like this book, in my opinion, wasn't well written, but it was engaging. The action sequences could easily be converted into a movie or show. They're just like really overdone and heavily described. The girls in this one are insufferable. It would have felt misogynistic in the way the women were written, if not for the men being written as equally annoying. I will say that the women are completely incapable of doing anything, and they're really boring and whiny, and I just hated them. I will say that the creatures were written as very realistic monsters, not fake monsters, and it had a very good suspenseful cliffhanger. I don't know if you remember the book that I reviewed a while ago, called like Mountain Bound. I think it was a monster romance. This is kind of that book if it was written as a horror book. Like, there's no romance between the creatures. It's like, if the creature from that book was starved for a really long time and then decided to start eating humans instead of having romantic relationships with them, that's kind of how this feels. I don't know. I enjoyed it. It's called The Shuddering, which is a fun title. Actually, all of her titles are pretty fun. You definitely start to kind of figure out why her books are called what they're called. You know, it's not the top of my list, but it's not the bottom of my list, so... Across the Bay is another Ania Ahlborn. It's kind of a mystery, but one thing that I've noticed about her is she kind of starts off with the result of what happens, and then you go back in time to figure out why things happened, or how things happened the way they did. It's an island in Maine, or off the coast of Maine. It has really good descriptions of clothing and outfits. It kind of in that way reminds me of the My Immortal series. If you know, you know, whatever. Early fanfiction days. Has moody teens. And it has, in my opinion, unrealistic personal monologue. It's kind of, a lot of her books kind of give you those Shakespearean vibes of like standing, looking over the water, and like thinking about all the things that are troubling you out loud so that the author can hear and that the readers can hear through the author. I don't know. Feels kind of, you know, whatever. The girl kind of reminds me of the author of My Immortal. That's literally a line I have in my notes. And the whole book is a reason of like why you should not give your personal information to people online. Oh, also, every single character is bad. And like every single character is responsible for what happens to them. Like in some way. I'm not going to spoil who, I'm not going to spoil how, but it's like, whoa. I literally wrote poetic and Shakespearean. It's a true tragedy, it's not a horror book. Like you could call it a horror book, it's not in my opinion a horror book. It's really crazy. And some of the end made a little like not a lot of sense and felt kind of melodramatic, but like the ending is good. I don't know, like I liked this book a lot. I'm not sure I'd say it was the top, almost the top maybe. I don't know, but it was so worth it. It felt more like a mystery novel to me than a horror book, because you're kind of like unwrapping the mystery. Um, I don't know. Let me know if you let people stay at your Airbnb after reading this book. The Neighbors is kind of a horror novel that's set in like a white picket fence community. You think it's like the perfect neighborhood, but then things start to be really off. It's a utopian dystopia, again, morally gray. There's a lot of trauma, there's backstory, there's mother issues, there's dad issues. Kind of reminded me of like No Place Like Home. I don't know, like, is the antagonist really an antagonist? Like, she is, but she's not. But she is. She really is. That's how I feel with all of Ania Ahlborn's books. I don't know how to feel after them, because it's like they're terrible people, but also the world's been terrible to them. Like, is this the way to respond? No. It's absolutely not. But you understand their motivations in like a really depressing way. Like, would you have done better? Probably. I wouldn't have ended up like these people. But there's something about it that you're just like, okay. I don't get it, but like I get it. I feel like someone's gonna come into my comment section who's read this book and be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And I understand. I understand. I'll take that. I'll take it. I Call Upon Thee was short but sweet. It started off well. It's about a Ouija game. There's mystery, there's death, there's a curse, there's grief, and there's self-blame. There's a lot of discussions of mental health. The last line that I have in my notes says, the ending was okay, but nothing was really resolved. It could be seen as a reflection of how loss never really leaves. I don't know. Maybe I'm trying too hard to see something that isn't there. Check it out. It's worth it. I didn't find this book super triggering. It's a horror book. It's horrific. Not a lot of people survive this. But it's also not super graphic. Like, there's descriptions of self-unaliving, but it's not, like, super gruesome. I don't know. Guard your mental health. If it starts getting bad, stop reading. That's the way I'm gonna discuss this. I had to read If You See Her Twice, another Ania Ahlborn. First time my notes say, boring and unengaging, and then I might try listening to this again since I fell asleep, but I also think me falling asleep says something. And then the second time I read it, it says, the chapters are unevenly long and short. It has historical flashbacks. The reader is just as confused through the whole thing as the main character is. It goes on and on aimlessly. Some chapters should have been cut in half. The book should have been cut in half. There's no reason for it to be this long. It really serves no purpose. It's a descent into madness. It kind of feels like an Exorcist ripoff, and it's just history repeating itself. And like, listen, you might like it. You can like it. That's your choice. For me, like, I'm glad I reread it and finished it and listened to the whole thing, because I did fall asleep last time. It's nice to know how it resolved. But not something I highly recommend. Great author, but this book was just kind of like, like my head's nodding, and I keep my eyes awake. My eyes are open. No, they're open. That's kind of how I felt. Still love the author, but this book was not it. I've read 2 Ania Ahlborn books in the last, I don't know, week. And if you remember, I read every single one of her books, one after the other, about 2 years ago. I can't believe. A year? has it been a year or 2 years? I guess it's almost 2 years ago. Oh my god, that's crazy. Anyway, I read The Pretty Ones and Palmetto, and they're both pretty short. She is a writer that I like a lot, so I kind of instantly clicked on them when I saw they were available on Audible. The Pretty Ones takes place in the time of the Son of Sam. The main character has a mysterious, quiet brother, a lot of family trauma, they hate their mother. It's a comparison between attractive girls and plain girls. It talks about a lot of societal expectations for women, melodramatic interior thoughts about how a woman should or shouldn't be, how she should act, who she should interact with, and all of that. Also the fear of being a woman in New York, which is very real. Also it talks about mental illness, PTSD, repressed memories, and per usual, there was like a huge plot twist towards the end, which is actually insane. And honestly, I wasn't really expecting it. It does a good job of keeping you on your toes, and even though I was expecting some sort of twist, I wasn't expecting that twist, and I was very excited. The second book is Palmetto, and I would not recommend this book to anyone who has like just had a baby or has a fear of bugs, because this book freaked me out, and I don't even have either of those things. It is entirely about bugs. Like, that is the fear. There were a couple of things that I did like about it, but do not listen to this while you're eating. Do not read or listen to this. It talks a lot about like motherhood stress, postpartum, freaking out, hormones, the feeling of insanity, like not being able to control your own actions, and also like a collapsing relationship due to mental health issues. I think what kind of amused me was that in the middle of it there is a self-reference to brothers. If you've read any of Ania Ahlborn, you've probably seen the book Brothers, and that is like one of the most messed up books ever. It's very weird. I personally didn't find it that scary, but it was more just very like disturbing and off-putting, which is what she does so well. But anyway, I would also really recommend these books. I'd say read Palmetto after you've read a couple for other books if you're okay with bugs. But otherwise, like, Pretty Ones is like a totally fine, short one-off that you can get through really easily, and I think it's a pretty good representation of her writing. I still think that a lot of her other books are better, but if you're looking for another of her books to read, I would recommend it. This is going to be a comprehensive summary of all of Ania Ahlborn. All of it that I've read. What I think she does is she writes modern horror fairy tales. They're very grim, they're dark for the sake of being dark. They usually end up being a reflection of human nature. I have read all the books that she has done that have been on Audible. I'm going to see if there's others I've missed. I might make a checklist of the ones that I have and have not read. They leave me with a disturbing feeling and a feeling of like, did I really enjoy that, or do I feel the need to have enjoyed it? Or should I not enjoy it? She goes with time warps and flashbacks. Her discussions of shrugging are really funny. Was it like lifting a shoulder to the ear? Like, I'm not really sure. There's really uncomfortable sexual imagery. Smexual? Whatever. Taboo is the only way I can phrase her books. They're like, they discuss things that should not be discussed or usually aren't discussed. She tackles a lot of marital problems and parent-children relationships, life complications. People are always humming under their breath. Like, I don't really know how you hum under your breath. Like, is that humming under your breath? I don't know. People are always being shaken by their shoulders, like a parent will just like reach and like shake their child, and you're like, what? Or like there's a friend shaking their friend, and you're like, stop shaking people. That's not what people do. there's like alternative children, like people who dress like me, and it reverse mysteries, knowing the ending and then figuring out how the story gets there by the end of the book, but like starting off knowing what happens. Her characters read Stephen King. It's not just one character, it's like a couple books her characters are reading a Stephen King novel. She has very complicated and sympathetic mothers, which is very appreciated, and a very eclectic taste in music. Like the amount of music in her books, like a lot of people are listening to a very specific song, and like Eminem to heavy metal, and you're like, okay, cool. She has a really weird fascination with the Wizard of Oz movie. It's not just one book. Multiple times, a character either references Wizard of Oz, like, you know, there's no place like home or something, and you're like, why are you referencing Wizard of Oz in more than one of your books? Also, she always uses jute rope. If there's ever a rope mentioned, it's always a jute rope. If you don't know what that is, here's a picture. Um, Also, slaps with rotated rings. Like, you have gem, whatever. And then it starts with really normal bass, which allows... I ran out of time on my comprehensive summary of my Ania Ahlborn video. What I was saying was that it starts with, like, her books start with a really normal bass, which allows the reader to focus on the differences between our normal natural world and the horror world that she's creating. But in this video, I'd really like to rank the books that she's done based on how I was feeling after I read them. So this is my current ranking of her books. And it's kind of interesting because I feel like the more I think about the books, the less I can really rank them because I kind of hated and loved them at the same time. So here we go. I'd actually say Within These Walls might be my top place, and then Seed, Dark Across the Bay, Brother, The Shuddering, The Neighbors, The Devil Crept In, I Call Upon Thee, The Bird Eater, and If You See Her. I think that would be my ranking, and you can watch my other videos for an explanation. I think that I said that Seed wasn't my top, and it's like not my top, but it's also as close to the top as I can put it. I feel like there were some kind of like plot holes or things that I wasn't really convinced by, but mostly it was good. Also, Within These Walls was just like the perfect size for the story that was given. Um, it was like very bite-sized, it was very short, but it also packed a lot in there, and I loved the kind of mysticism, family relations. I don't know, it was just like really nice, and I think it's a very good example of her writing without being super long. Um, so I hope that gives you a sense of kind of like maybe how to read her books. I would honestly read from bottom of the list to the top of the list, um, because I think increasing the goodness of the book is better. Also, this is starting from a pretty high starting place. Like, sure, If You See Her was boring and I fell asleep, but the writing is good. Honestly, the horror part of it is good. Um, the mental illness is treated very nuanced. So I don't know. If you're interested in starting to read her books, this is definitely what I would recommend. This is my ranking, and I'd be interested to know how you would rank her books or how you feel about her books. So if you end up reading any of them, please tell me, because I just need another opinion.